All right, our next speaker is a little more inflammatory. You might be familiar with him. There's a little town he likes to reference quite a bit. It's called Retardville. Some people are wondering whether it's LA or New York, but he hasn't really said. He's Hunter Avallone, and I hope you guys enjoy him.
Thanks for that, Isaac. Yeah, I wanted to say thank you, everyone, for coming. Thanks for this amazing opportunity. I think it's really cool to see so many different people come together with different views, different opinions, to all just kind of hear other people's own opinions and stuff. Today, I wanted to talk about something that I think is very important, and that is my generation. More specifically, the future of my generation, because at the moment, I haven't been exactly too happy with certain aspects I've seen. I'm not sure I want my future kids growing up in a world where identifying as a pansexual, transgender vegan is some kind of a symbol of bravery. Now, there are several issues that I've noticed with my generation, but today I want to talk about only a few, and I also want to talk about possible solutions to some of these problems. One of these problems that's grown increasingly popular is this new victim mentality culture. And before I share some examples of this, I want to focus on where I believe some of this comes from. Although I can't just give one answer, I do believe some colleges play a role in creating victims. For example, Ohio State offered a safe space for students after the election of Donald Trump, where there would be poetry reading and a community art project. So a bunch of so-called adults coloring pictures. College kind of reminds me of, like, remember when you were a kid, you hear something you don't like, and you start plugging your ears and closing your eyes so you don't have to hear it? It kind of reminds me of what's happening to a degree, only these people are not children. But the thing is, this is a safe space offered by the college. So the college is allowing this kind of coddling. The college is allowing this victim mentality to grow. And this isn't the only college offering safe spaces either. Colleges from Florida to California offer them. And I don't think this is any way to live, hiding from any outside opinion. My grandmother told me that when she went to college, it was a place to expand your mind and become prepared for the future. But because college has become more and more, but nothing more than coddling and closed-mindedness. I think college creates this special snowflake victim mentality, because if you were constantly coddled and told how important your feelings were, you might start to feel like a victim also. And usually being the victim is rewarded with attention as well as more coddling. So now in this society run amok by social justice, and in part the regressive left, it's seen as a good thing to be the victim. This in turn creates a generation of adult children whose only goal in life is to be just that, to be the victim even when they are not. Opinions that are controversial or contradict the opinions held by the victims are now deemed as hate speech, triggering, and call for a safe space to protect them from anything they disagree with. Yet the so-called victims are given the loudest voice. I think this victim culture is the reason we are seeing a rise in fake hate crimes. Since the election, there have been around 22 fake hate crimes, many of which come from students. For example, a Muslim student claimed that Trump supporters tried to rip her hijab off, only to later admit the story was fabricated. Chicago students claimed to receive hateful notes with homophobic slurs from Trump supporters, only to have the university confirm these messages were bogus. And college students faked racist writing on a staircase, only to have the police and FBI confirm it was fake. You see, these people want to be the victim, but there just isn't enough racism and bigotry to go around. So they have no choice but to lie and fake these hate crimes at an attempt to be elevated to the victim status. I think victim culture is responsible for third-wave feminism. At one point I think feminism was a very necessary movement, however it no longer is. Women are equal and they have equal rights, yet our culture continues to feed women lies that they are marginalized, oppressed people. I think it's absurd, and honestly, it really seems to only be the feminists who are now telling women, who are causing women to think this way. For example, the wage gap has been debunked a multitude of times, including by a female Harvard professor in 2016, yet this myth is constantly reiterated. Not only this, but it's been illegal to pay women less since the Equal Pay Act of 1963, yet feminists ignore the factual data for the sake of claiming victim status. I think victim culture, in part, is responsible for the Black Lives Matter movement. It created this false idea that black people are still oppressed in this country. And I think it's very important to remember that, of course, there is still prejudice. There will always be people prejudiced against black people, white people, Hispanic people, and you'll never know what's truly in someone's heart. And at one point, I do think black people were oppressed in our country, but as times have changed, I think it's unfair to lie to these people by suggesting they are still oppressed. And I mean this from a legal standpoint, as in, show me a right that a black person does not have that a white person does. It was funny, a couple weeks ago I mentioned on Twitter that, I don't think black people are discriminated against in this country any longer, and this tweet, along with a few other tweets, got picked up by this small little news organization, which in their headline claimed I was attacking black people. Now, I'm pretty sure telling black people they are not oppressed shouldn't be controversial, but it directly interrupts this victim mentality, and therefore it is. Other lies we hear from Black Lives Matter, along with the mainstream media, is this idea that black people are being shot left and right by racist police. This is a very serious issue, but in part it's untrue. For example, a recent study conducted by a black Harvard professor found that in places like Houston, black people were either less likely to be shot or had the same chance of being shot as a white person. Other studies conducted found that black suspects are also more likely to be shot by black police officers. But studies like this are never brought up by Black Lives Matter activists because how can they bring this up? The data directly contradicts their victim narrative. The truth is, it's become increasingly difficult to claim victim status and not ignore factual data. You simply cannot be a victim any longer without ignoring facts. Another issue that's become increasingly apparent is this attempt at being tolerant. We're told a lot that tolerance is important. Unless you're a white man, then you're like Adolf Hitler and deserve to have your event canceled after violent protests. At one point tolerance was quite honestly needed, but we've gotten to the point that we are so desperate to be tolerant, we will tolerate virtually anything. And I think a perfect example of this is Islam. I consider Islam to be the greatest cancer on this entire planet. It is violent, it's dangerous, and it directly contradicts the values which members of this generation claim to stand for. Yet for whatever reason, saying things like this gets you called Islamophobic. We're told nonstop that in order to be tolerant, we need to accept that Islam is the religion of peace. Call me whatever you want, I think Islam is the religion of rest and peace. In 2016 alone, there were 2,477 Islamic attacks in 59 different countries, leaving over 20,000 people dead. In 2017 already, there have been 551 Islamic attacks in 39 different countries, leaving over 3,000 people dead. But for whatever reason, we're supposed to ignore this for the sake of tolerance. I cannot tolerate something this intolerant. Similar to the victim mentality, it's almost not possible to remain tolerant to certain things like that while not also ignoring facts. And quite honestly, if your need for remaining tolerant causes you to ignore facts, I don't think you're being tolerant, I think you're being ignorant. So this is partly the current state of my generation, and from what I've seen, I'm not particularly happy about it. So the next question is, what's the solution? And I wish I could give just one answer, but I cannot. I can, however, give a few ideas of what I think could help move us in the right direction. The first would be to feminists to just please stop treating women like this oppressed group. There are currently more women in the US than men. They're not a fragile minority group. Women are not victims. The same could be said for minority groups as well. Data directly contradicts the victim narrative that's been told, so it's time to stop lying and just acknowledge the truth. Minorities are not victims in this country. I think it's time certain colleges stop treating their students like children who still need coddling. Facts are facts, and no matter how much you disagree with them, you cannot hide from the truth in your safe space. And lastly, I think communication is key in all of this. Oftentimes, disagreement is seen as hate, but simply communicating otherwise can help change this ridiculous assumption. There's nothing wrong with listening to another point of view, whether you disagree or not. Listen and debate your point. And I think it's really important to remember that these people I criticize within my generation are their own group of people. I would consider them social justice warriors, and yes, I'm sure some of them are liberals, but it would be unfair to use this loud minority of coddled, victim-minded people as the face of the entire left. Doing this, I think, will only cause more division. But we're the future, and it's not too late to change where it's headed. Our country is very divided at this time. However, I think putting facts over feelings, communicating with those you disagree with, and leaving behind victim culture can truly help to bridge the divide. Thank you.